Today we'll be talking about climate change. President Muhammadu Buhari has made a commitment to cut a carbon emission to net zero by 2060. Now, he made the declaration at the United Nations Climate Change Conference in Glasgow, UK. But analysts actually say Nigeria's commitment to climate action is short on details. And to answer some of our questions, we have Aliyu, Sadiq, an environmentalist and a climate change advocate in the studio. But before we, cue him, let's watch this.
Africa is grateful. Since the pledges by the financial partners, the United Nations Convention to combat desertification has continued to give technical backstopping to the Pan-African Agency of the Great Green Wall through the establishment of Great Green Wall Accelerator for the 2021 to 2030 decennial priority investment plan for Great Green Wall program. This is to fast-track the implementation process with the prime purpose of translating the pledged financial resources of 19.68 billion United States dollars into hectares of land restoration and other livelihood improvements at various country levels. On progress of actions so far taken to actualize the process, Nigeria participated in drafting and harmonizing the result framework for the accelerator with 5 cardinal pillars to address the 2021-2030 decennial priority investment plan ambition of the Great Green Wall, with focus on the following: A, restoration of 100 million hectares of degraded land; B, sequestration of 250 million tons of carbon; C, creation of 10 million green jobs; D, resilient economic development in the various member states; E, capacity strengthening and development.
All right, that was President Muhammadu Buhari at the climate change conference happening in Glasgow, Scotland. Now we have Aliyu Sadiq in the studio. He's an environmentalist and a climate change advocate. Welcome to the show.
Thank you, Madam Zainab, and I'm glad to be here.
You drove all the way from Lafia, isn't it?
Nasrawa, yes, Karo.
All right. Now, in the president's speech, he mentioned that Nigeria has restored degraded lands and is committed to restore 4 million more. But experts are raising concerns about how realistic this is. What are your thoughts about that?
Yes, I would say we are more of a promising-making country rather than an action-taking country, because you would find out that Nigeria, which is at the tropical part of the globe, we have faced, especially around the northern parts, the northeastern part of the country, we have a whole lot of desert encroachment, which is directly affecting farming activities. Lands are being deforested, as well as activities of local communities. A majority of, especially local people, depend on these firewoods for their source of cooking energy. As such, this has degraded the amount of land within that areas, which now the question is, the president made this statement, what are we seeing evidently? If during the last COP25, which happened in 2019, the president made a commitment that Nigeria was going to plant 25 million trees, yes, as part of efforts of the federal government to cushion the impact of climate change. Till date, I would say if really we are planting 25 million trees, I should see at least one beside my house or one in my community. But we only hear some of these commitments, some of these pledges, but then we really don't see this action on ground. We who are community activists, climate change, we, in fact, there are more efforts in the aspect of the CSOs who make a lot of effort in terms of, there are a lot of NGOs who go as far as planting trees. So I would say the government is leveraging more on the actions of the CSO and NGOs rather than itself being part of the implementation. When you go to Federal Ministry of Environment, you find out that they always, especially Department of Climate Change, yes, there are a lot of policies put in place to ensure a holistic approach towards attacking the issues of climate change. But then they will tell you that they are not an implementation agency. So the bulk of the work rests on civil society, NGOs, community activists like me and many others. So I would say really it's a statement that is in process, because we are yet to see the impact of some of these pledges and commitments.
Okay, now aside the policies, do you think Nigeria has the technology and the capacity to actually drive climate action?
Yes, one of the take-home, or one of the our key demand at this COP26, we had a pre-COP, that's a pre-conference of parties at CSO networks. One of the main demand was for Africa to demand for technology transfer, knowledge transfer, as well as funding. Without the technology, the knowledge, and the funding, we can only keep making promises. Yes, we have the population, we have the resources, but without the technology and the knowledge to refine these resources into strategies that would help achieve climate change, we are really behind. And so far, so good. Nigeria, we can't compare ourselves to other nations taking real action, such as our neighboring Rwanda, who has gone far, and they are able to now show evidently their action towards achieving a green transition, and they are becoming a green city. Rwanda, now even the world makes an example of Rwanda as green city in Africa. Now Nigeria is far yet to reaching that extent and that level. So irrespective that the COP26 didn't really go to our favor, I would say to a large extent we are disappointed at some of the outcome of decisions made there, world leaders. We really need to put more effort. The federal government has a whole role to play in terms of this technology transfer. Now it's not about the commitment, it's not about the beautiful policies on paper. It now has to do with how are you now bringing in this technology, renewable energy, solar. These are mitigation technologies, but then we have few technologies that or companies that are really into solar. We import, and even when we import, you find out that even to install, to maintain is a problem. So after installing off-grid solar in communities at grassroots, local communities who don't have access to the national grid, after this solar technologies gets faulty, maintaining them is an issue. So that's a big gap as to how Nigeria can get to its commitment of saying they want to achieve, we want to achieve net zero by 2060. What are we doing now to ensure net zero? Yeah, people like London made the commitment that by 2030 they would they would divest from petroleum-driven cars into clean electronic cars. These, we are seeing evidently their commitments towards achieving this 2030. Now Nigeria, we are saying by 2060. So what are we seeing now towards 2060? If nothing, then it's more of a promise and without. Okay,
so would you say that we have stand-down policies to drive this cause?
Beautiful stand-down policies, yes. The recently approved climate change bill policy that was approved, I think, sometime in March, April this year. We have a whole lot of the NDCs, nationally determined contributions. That Nigeria submitted its intended NDC in 2015. The after some reviews and there was the fully drafted NDC that was submitted this 2021, and there are a lot of strategic plans in terms of energy, agriculture, forestry, transportation, waste. Waste was included recently, waste and water. These are strategies that can help achieve the net zero emission by 2060. They are really well detailed, achieved, and we haven't. There is a part for the waste whereby there is how because 10% of global greenhouse gas emission emitted is actually from wastes due to unmanaged and improper management of waste. So part of the NDC is that for waste, they would it will be recycled and from organic waste into feed for animals, into cooking gas, into fertilizers to support agricultural. So there are a lot of, take for example, Lagos State, which I would say is a really focal state in terms of climate change in Nigeria. Lagos State has its own strategic plan. 5-year, it released its 5-year strategic plan aimed at cushioning the impact of climate change and achieving net zero. And they're already making impact. You find out that there's this BRT system of busing. This aim is to reduce the amount of cars on the road that makes use of fossil fuel. So when you have more of BRTs, people don't have to use their cars and go out for work, considering the number of emission that is being generated from this road. So we really have the policies. And all I would say is we need more of effort and political will to implement these policies.
Okay, now can you tell us a few dangers of climate change?
Yes, so the dangers of climate change goes across, irrespective of your profession, where you live, where you reside, it has a direct impact on both human health and the environment, as well as our biodiversity. When you go down to the southern part of the country, coastal regions, there is an increasing amount of flooding, as well as the north central parts, places like Benue, places that are proximity to river areas, as well as ocean. This is as a result of rise in sea levels. When you have melting ice caps due to increasing temperature. Now, these ice caps melt, they can no longer, due to the harsh temperatures. As they melt, they tend to increase the sea levels. And this is what brings about the rise in cases of flooding. This flooding has a devastating impact. When you go to Lagos State, I think this year we've recorded a whole amount of flooding cases. This has destroyed properties. This has killed lives of people. This has the loss and damage in terms of flooding is high. This is a result of climate change. When you go down up to the northern regions, northeast, northwest, I mentioned earlier issues of desertification. People who predominantly depend on agriculture as their major source of livelihood no longer have the favorable climate, and rainfall variation is no longer regular. The soils become more steeper. As such, they can't really be productive. So this is affecting the livelihood, and this has a direct linkage to issues of insecurity, because when the major source of my livelihood I have known since I grew up, I can no longer get the actual amount of productivity, it results to food insecurity. Now we're saying people by 2050, if care is not taken, especially in Nigeria with a population of over 200, that this population is expected to double by 2050, 2100. We would have a lot of undernourished people would no longer have food. So climate change cut across. When I go back to issues of biodiversity, sea level of acidity increases. As such, the fishes, the aquatic animals in the oceans can no longer survive this severe, extreme, harsh weathers. And it's people. There are a lot of people who depend on fishing as their major source of livelihood. So when these fishes are, in fact, there's an assumption which is also as a result of research that by 2050 we'll have more plastics in the ocean than fish. Now, this shows you that the fish can no longer, apart from fish, other animals can no longer withstand if we don't meet or maintain 1.5 degrees of global rise in temperature. By 2 degrees rise in temperature, it will be unbearable for us to even survive or live on the Earth's surface. So that's how extreme the impact of climate change is, and how devastating it is to we as individuals and our community.
Okay. Now, with China and Russia, world's largest polluter, absent, at the COP26 presently, where does this leave the rest of the world?
Yes, there was I think 2 days ago I was on social media, and there were more. It will surprise you to know that there were even more fossil fuel companies at the COP than green investors. This is why I mentioned that Nigeria, we are really not happy, and we are disappointed at the outcome of some of the COP26 proceedings. There was the organizer of the COP, that's the president of the COP, Alok Sharma, there were some speculation that he got donations to organize the COP from fossil fuel companies. Now, while we are saying we want an end to fossil fuel, we want to achieve net zero by 2050, we are making commitment towards green divestment, we want renewable energy, we want this, and then we are seeing more of fossil fuel now championing some of these proceedings. So it's a red flag that really we are not really in line with our objectives. China, Russia, and other countries, I feel they are shying away from the truth, and that's based on the capitalist nature, and I believe they are doing that based on their personal interests. Right. Because when Barack Obama made his speech yesterday, he said, which is a fact, climate change is not an issue of my country or your country. Climate change is a global threat that might really destroy the entire world. So if China, Russia are shying away from, making a commitment towards achieving the targets of the Paris Agreement, which is to achieve to maintain 1.5 or to avoid a temperature from reaching 2 degrees, but to be surprised that they are not even showing up and participating in these proceedings that will help achieve this, it really means that we have a lot. We cannot achieve this without the cooperation of especially dominant and powerful nations such as China, Russia. So I would say these nations have to look beyond just profits. They have to look beyond what they stand to gain now. And it doesn't profit the net amount that was estimated to help achieve 1.5 is approximately around $15 trillion. Now, to mitigate it below 2 degrees, below 1.5 degrees, about $30 trillion, about 2 degrees, about $15 trillion. But it has a price. Now, not taking action has a more severe price. The loss, damage, and effects we stand to experience when we don't take action or spend this amount of money, we might be faced with damages of up to about 60 trillion in the next 100 to 150 years. Yes. So while China depends on the profits without looking at the aspect of green transition, let's go green, I would say it's more of a wise man who thinks he's not wise. So they really need to come on deck, come to the chair of negotiation, and strike a balance to achieve sustainable development that will bring about green growth, economic progress, as well as the social growth of the entire world.
Okay, well, we actually have a lot of countries coming out to say in 2060, in 2030, but then scientists have actually said, the benchmark should be 10 years. 10 years, or it's going to be devastating. Do you think 10 years is achievable at all?
The truth is 10 years it's not achievable. That's because for every action there are processes towards achieving the action or the aim of what. Now when we say 10 years, when we say 20 years, the target is, some countries are saying 2050. Nigeria, by as at the last COP, said 2050. Now
it moved it 10 years.
The this current COP26, Nigeria is saying by 2060. That is because they are seeing it evidently that it is not achievable. But it boils down to planning. It boils down to finance, climate finance. What is the amount set aside? During the last COP, there was a commitment by countries to donate $100 billion annually to developing countries who are most affected by climate change, to help them adapt, such as technology transfer, and as well as bring about the adaptation strategies. But then when you look at the commitments, it is not forthcoming. The $100 billion go to communities, go to grassroots. These funds are said to have been disbursed, but you don't see the impact. And again, level of corruption, it's another issue. In 2014, about 9 billion naira was approved by the federal government to support clean cooking in rural communities. And to my surprise and to the surprise of many civil society, the money was followed by code, Hamza Lawal, to see there was really no impact. 9 billion naira, there was no impact. So without deliberate political will, transparency, the financing, the commitment, we really cannot achieve even the 2060 that we're saying. There has to be a change in the status quo. We have to now sit down and move from business as usual and be deliberate that, okay, by 20 this, what are we now putting in place? That in the next 10 years, do we have a monitoring mechanism that, okay, we can record progress, achievements, what are the lessons learned, how can we put it to the next phase of our action, 2030, 2040. This is now where we can now measure our progress and say, okay, by 2060 or latest by 2070 we can achieve. But without this put in place, it is really just a story to say, and we might not really get to where we wish to get to.
Okay, now before we wrap up, this segment of the program, more young people, are going into climate action and all of that, and you are one of them. You recently spoke at the COP26 side event of the Commonwealth Youth Network. Could you walk us through, some of the conversations around, that?
Yes, I am glad to say that more young people around the world are taking action because the threats of climate change might not really, we're seeing the impact now, but the impact are minute compared to what we might experience in the next 50 to 100 years. And young people are the generation of the future. So that is why young people are now standing up and saying, no, leaders of the old generation, save our generation, save us, else we might really have no stories to tell because we won't even be able to survive. The young lady Greta Thunberg, who was a 13-year-old girl, was able to inspire a lot of young people from across the world. And now we have a lot of activists from Gambia, from Kenya, people like Elizabeth Watuti, Vanessa Nakate, and many others who are now standing up and rising to, say, these are the issues, these are the challenges, save our generation. And the good thing is, not every leader is listening, but it is still attracting a larger amount of momentum for the climate change movement. While the COP was ongoing, I was invited by the by the Commonwealth Youth Climate Change Network, to talk about actions, locally led climate actions we are doing across in Nigeria, as well as other activists across the country, across the globe. And it was really inspiring to see not just my work, but the work of other people from across the world taking action in the aspect of waste management, waste to wealth, renewable energy, climate change education for schools, building the generation of the younger generation to be able to have a better knowledge as to the issue, because when you don't know the problem, you won't be able to identify the solution. But now there was a program we had which is still ongoing, a fellowship for young students in secondary schools, and while we had a boot camp, we were able to now, it was more of idea harvesting. Okay, we're able to bring them down to understand the problem. While we started, they were really ignorant about whatever it is, and the anointing is the schools we go to, they don't really prepare us for the reality of life. I studied geography and environmental management, but I'll tell you, most of what I learned in terms of the environment is really not in my classroom, it's out of the classroom. So they were able to make them understand the issue, and then we went down to, now while we were having a more of an idea harvest session, I was really, intrigued to see the level of ideas this student had. Now, take for example, these ideas are now being, propelled into solutions, and then there are finances to champion them into actions. These students will be motivated to do more. But when you have ideas, there was the Youth Incubation Hub that the Federal Ministry of Environment organized, and young people from across the country, various regions, came up with their ideas, beautiful ideas: solar, bicycles, ways to briquettes to support cooking energy for local communities. And then after all these ideas were harvested and these people had to, it's really disheartening to say that ideas were just gathered and nothing was done about it. So there is really no motivation, irrespective that the young people are rising up to say, okay, this, we want to take action. There should be some level of encouragement to support their ideas, as well as build their knowledge, capacity building to make them. This brings the aspect of knowledge transfer as technology transfer to achieve the vision of the presidents of 2060. Yes.
Okay. Well, thank you so much for taking time out of your busy schedule to speak to us on climate change.